In this week's video, I thought I would take you all the way back to the beginning and how we started this sheep farm from scratch. It's not been easy.
I couldn't find a sheep farm for scratch.
I've had a ton of people asking me, what are your biggest tips and tricks? And I think before I get to that, I think it's really important to know where I've come from. I'm not an expert. All I can talk about is the challenges that we've encountered and how we've coped and how we've gotten through some of this stuff. So yeah, stay tuned to the end and I'll discuss maybe just what I've learned and some tips for anybody getting into sheep farming. The journey into sheep farming began in 2011. I wasn't always a sheep farmer. Before sheep, I was working in Mark's family's broiler breeder business. So I worked in the chicken barns basically from 1998 after I graduated and after I got married, right up to 2011, where we did some family succession. The grain farm was getting big enough just for Mark to do by himself. So I came home and wanted to help him, but I still missed the barn and being in the barn, and we looked at quite a few different livestock options. So we needed a business that would work well with the grain farm. Sheep was the one that we finally stumbled across after doing some research and seeing that really the demand for lamb was growing every year, and the market when I got into it was really good. That's basically how we decided to get into sheep. So 2011, what we did was we renovated this old pig barn. It was a typical pig barn, so concrete walls, concrete floors, concrete pens. So we gutted the whole thing. We re-poured a floor. We raised the center alley for feed. I didn't have a lot of designs to go off of when we designed this. We kept it fairly simple. The pens are 14 feet deep, and I think it's 112 long, and then there's another I think the barn's 120 total in width and 40 across. So we just did the center alley so I could put bales in the middle and just have a floor feed bunk. The ceiling was a drop ceiling, and so there was steel, of course, on the rafter there. We took that all out, took all the insulation down, and left the steel on the original steel ceiling on. What we did was we took insulation panels and basically insulated on the outside and then laid another layer of steel to that roof. So we did that ourselves. We got chimneys put in, and we also took off the steel on the sides and put in curtains, and they're all run manually just by cranks. These gates here, they are a 14-foot gate. We bought those at TSC, and I actually would not recommend those. It definitely has corroded and rotted. The bottoms rot. So I would spend a little bit more money and get something that's not going to rot when it's exposed to manure. 2012 is when we got our first sheep, and they went in here. So I started with about 50. They came pregnant. I bought them from a sheep buyer. He buys sheep, puts them together as groups, and then sells them. Unfortunately, they also came with some health issues. So I had this brand new renovated barn, and my first lambing group took place probably a few weeks after I got those ewes. And the first 13 out of 50 aborted, like they miscarried their babies. I was a mess. I didn't know anything about sheep, about lambing. I figured I knew enough about livestock. It wouldn't be that hard. I couldn't have been more wrong, to be honest. That was a hard lesson, not just jumping into something without doing a lot of research, maybe working at a farm. We did all the lambing in here. I soon came to realize that this barn was not really set up that well for lambing or weaning or handling ewes, so I bought a handling system. There was a livestock traceability funding that was available in Ontario. I applied and got this Marweld handling system. The problem with this barn, I didn't build it with a handling system in mind. I built the barn first and then I thought about it, and the problem with it is the only place I can set it up is on the end in the middle of the alley, so I can't always leave it up because I'm always bringing in bales and stuff. So definitely something to think about when you are looking at maybe building a barn or a facility. Really build it around your handling system, because this is what's going to make you a good sheep farmer, is having a really good handling system. 2012 was a hard year. By the end of 2012, the market had crashed. When we were looking at numbers, of course, we were crunching numbers based on, potential growth and what the industry looked like, and the fact that lamb prices were phenomenal. What a false sense of security. Because we weren't in the industry, we didn't know enough that those numbers were not really a historical thing. I don't find we did our business plan. We did it based on kind of industry average. But we were new. We were nowhere near industry average. I bought ewes really, really expensive because the market was strong, and I was selling lambs, and not even very many lambs, and the price was terrible. Yeah, it was tough. That first year and a half was really tough. We really started digging deep in our numbers, and we were trying to see what are the things that need to change to stay in this business. Our biggest thing that came blatantly obvious was that feed is a lot of money, and we have land we could use for feed. So we looked at what made the most sense to grow feed, and that was expanding the flock. A little spoiler alert, lambing has begun. If you need a lamb fix, because I know a lot of you do, check me over on Instagram, go on stories, and you'll get to see lots of babies and hear lots of birds every day. So in 2013, we did expand our flock. We went from 150 ewes to 500 ewes. So we added 350 kind of mature ewes, a cross-section of a ton of different breeds and commercial ewes. And we built this bright span. It's a tarp barn, basically, 80 feet wide, 252 feet long. If I didn't learn the first time, I definitely learned the second time that bringing new animals to any facility that already has animals in it, or mixing them together, is kind of like running a daycare. They're just going to mix their bugs all together, and you become a little bit of a cesspool until they all are immune to the same bugs. So a few more issues after I brought in those ewes. I tried to kind of reduce costs by purchasing a lot of used stuff inside. There is still a lot of new stuff, but I tried my best to get some used. As for our feeding system, I talked a little bit about when we made the decision to jump in ewe numbers, we also had to make the decision to start growing our own feed. The first year we did try to bale everything, and it was a nightmare. The baling part was awesome, so getting them off the field was great. You can do that quick. Our TMR mixer did not work well with bales. That TMR machine is basically a glorified KitchenAid. It just ropes. It does not chop the hay enough to then go in our feed cart. So we did try bales the first year, and then the second year we switched all to chopped forage. 2014, that year started out with a bang. Literally, I slipped and fell on some ice pulling this bale cart, and I broke my ankle in 3 spots. So my husband had to lamb. I thought I was going to lose my mind. We learned a lot in that time frame because I was 6 weeks out of commission. I had to sit back and learn a few things, and Mark, because he's not a livestock guy, he thinks differently, and he developed a few systems during lambing that I'm like, that is a freaking brilliant idea. Just little things that I learned from him. 2014 was also a year that I invested in myself. So I started a course called the Master Shepherd course, Master Shepherd's program. It's put on through Ontario Sheep. That's our provincial organization for sheep farmers. That drastically changed my life. I took a lot of the tools that I learned there and came back to the farm and started putting a lot of things into practice, started building systems, organization systems, which is what I thrive on. It is a big flock, so what I decided to do is make the whole farm into smaller flocks. So they share a roof, they share the pens, but they rotate through depending where they are in their life. 2014, that was a real turning point in my career as a sheep farmer. Most of that was because I invested in myself, and I invested in finally learning a little more about the sheep itself, about the infrastructure, and I stopped fighting what I built and started embracing how I can change my management system to fit all the things that I thought was wrong with the barn, which there is nothing wrong with this barn, it was the things were wrong with me. The one thing that I just was not seeming to be able to get ahead of was health issues. From when I started, basically right up to 2014, 2015, I was still buying in all my replacement ewe lambs and all my rams. Of course, I still buy all my rams. I was buying just here and there and everywhere. What I was finding, I was having a lot of health issues, so my culling rate and my mortality rate was high. A lot of that was trying to improve my flock. When I got down to finally about almost half of what I originally purchased, I then finally sought out a really good high health flock that I could buy replacement ewes from. Quite honestly, that has changed the course of this farm. I now have a breeding stock that was high health that most of all my replacement ewe lambs have come from. I think over 2 purchases I bought another 180 ewes. So in 2015, that 180 ewes that I bought have now become my foundation breed of my maternal line. They have a Dorset Rideau base genetics, and they brought in a few different breeds from New Zealand to top up that breed. So it's a real composite breed. So 2015 was all about trying to figure out how to close my flock. ...2017, the year that I almost felt like I knew what I was doing. And we made it almost through the entire year of some better results and the system starting to work, you know, working closely with my vet and my feed guy, and just feeling like I caught my breath. And that October, I got a call from my vet. We had a few abortion issues. That abortion storm was a bit different. It was my September lambing group. They were aborting early. They were aborting a month earlier, so a month to the day they were due. So we did send some lambs to the lab, but it was the same old culprits, chlamydia being one of them. And whenever, my vet's always like, whenever chlamydia is involved, it's always a smoking gun. So this was before we really had this vaccination program, and definitely something that we have now. A month later, the lab had called my vet. They called with a bug that they hadn't seen in a while called Brucellus ovis. And my vet called me immediately. We were on high alert, and I was devastated because I finally felt like I knew what I was doing and kind of had this sheep thing figured out, and I was like, I am a failure. It was awful. And we tracked it back to a ram, and I remember buying the ram and I wasn't comfortable with it, but I took it anyway because I didn't want to put the guy out. I had to completely depopulate the rams that I had. I had just bought 2 brand new Ile-de-France rams I was so proud of. And actually those 2 came back clean when we tested them. So I put them in isolation. I took them to the other barn and tested them about a month and a half later, and then they tested positive. So I ended up having to get rid of them all. So I took the time and I bought some Suffolks, some Rideaus, and some Ile-de-France. So those are my 3 sire lines. I've had them ever since. Pretty proud of getting through that. It was definitely with the help of my vet. He was therapy plus he made the protocol that I stuck to, and we got through it. I can't even put into words how different it is lambing out replacement ewe lambs that you have raised since they were babies. They're night and day from when I used to buy them. We're starting to see some really positive effects of using vaccinations for chlamydia. That was a huge one. Keeping up on my TASVAX vaccinations for clostridial diseases. all these little things and really honing in on my management of, you know, hoof trimming and shearing and all these things and doing them at set times. That brings us to 2019, which is this year. What I'm never satisfied with is my lambing period. I'm always trying to get better at lambing. The one thing I can comment on is I feel much less stressed. I know it doesn't appear like that on camera. I've learned a lot with the whole lambing process, but I'm still trying to hone in on some more skills. I'm trying to, you know, keep more alive in those first 24 hours, if that means like putting a bottle on a holster and just me bottle feeding anything that looks like it's going backwards. That's what I do. The importance of colostrum has changed my life, just the organization of it, everything. And then from then it's been, you know, I'm trying to do a lot more work on data collection and data management and data analytics. I'm not interested in expanding, but I want to expand through improvement. And 2019 has all just been about going back to the things that work and try to improve on the stuff that still needs improved on. So I think I've kind of captured the journey of how we got from basically 2011 when I started renovating an old pig barn to 2019 where we are now. It's been quite a journey, and I've learned probably the most I've ever learned in any of the other industries. And I guess I want to share with you some tips if you're thinking about getting into the sheep industry. I get asked this question a lot, and I hate giving out expertise advice because I'm not an expert. I'm still learning, and I am much more willing to be a guinea pig and to show you the stuff that works and doesn't work than for you guys to think that I'm telling you what to do. That is not what I'm about. So take this for what it's worth, but from what I've learned in my very short tenure as a sheep farmer, look for really good, clean stock. I've said this before in almost every video. You're gonna pay more for it. It's okay. It's gonna cost you so much more if you bring in problems and issues. If you're bringing in health issues, A, they're gonna die, because they do. B, they're gonna infect some clean animals if you already have some. If you are starting from scratch, you may as well not bring stuff into a nice clean new barn or new pasture or anything and contaminate what doesn't even have sheep on it yet. The other thing is start with where you are. So what do you have available? Is it pasture? Do you have really good pasture, or are they available, or do you have something that you can rent? My friend Chris and Lindsay, I did a video on them. They didn't have a lot of stuff available, but what they did see was an opportunity with a solar farm. And so they pasture that all summer. Plus, if there's extra, they cut the grass, bale it, and take that home for their winter feed when they have to bring those animals home. So think a little bit outside the box. What do you have available for you right now that would help you get into sheep? I guess the next thing to look at is, what do you need to make this work? Do you need an off-farm job to finance this stuff? How are you going to finance it? For us, the business side of stuff, we use the grain operation to finance the sheep barn. We have spent a lot of money. We spent a lot of money on the sheep itself. We've spent a lot of money on a brand new barn, on all the equipment that we needed. So the grain operation has helped. Definitely equity. When you went to the bank to ask for a loan, we had the grain operation. So where are you financially, and also where are you from a time perspective? Because when I'm lambing or doing some management jobs and all these other things, I don't have a lot of help. So when we're in the fields, I have to really juggle where my time's going to be. And if you have an off-farm job to supplement a new farm or sheep or whatever, because you very well, a lot of my friends have to have an off-farm job to support their sheep farm, because the sheep farm is their dream, and they need a job to basically finance their dream. And that's no different than us. I have to work with Mark to make the grain operation, that is my off-farm job on the farm, to help support the sheep. Another thing to look at is the end game. What's the end goal? What do you want your sheep for? Is it fiber? Is it for the wool? So if it's not wool, is it milk? So do you want to be a dairy sheep farmer? And that's a whole another thing that I know nothing about. And then the third thing is meat. So majority of sheep farm, I'm not gonna say majority, but the majority that I know are in it for the production of meat. And we have a huge opportunity here in Ontario because Toronto and that surrounding area is a huge lamb eating population. And when we were getting into the industry, that was a big thing that we looked at. Definitely look at who your customers are gonna be. So what is your end goal? What is your end game for your sheep? The other tip I would say, this kind of goes along with buying healthy stock, but for me it was closing the flock. So starting to grow my own replacement ewes. It's been a huge change in my farm. I find lambing is not near as it's always stressful, but it's not near as stressful with ewes that I've raised since they were babies. And the other thing with that is the whole health issue. They are getting a lot of their immunities brought in from their mums. So if I'm buying stock, I have no idea what their mums are vaccinated with, and quite likely they're gonna bring in their own little daycare bugs and share it with all the animals that I have in the barn. Selection of breed is another thing you have to really look at, and that is gonna really be dependent on, again, where are you starting? Are you going to have them in a pasture? Are they going to be housed in a barn majority of the year or all of the year or part of the year? Do you want a really prolific flock? So do you want lots of babies? Do you want an accelerated lambing system? Do you want them lambing, all year long? So those are questions you have to ask yourself before you look at a breed. I can't tell you what breed to choose because there's a ton of different breeds and there's some very passionate people in their own purebred areas of breeding stock. Some breeds are better on grass. I know my friends Chris and Lindsay have learned a lot on their solar farm that some just are really good mothers outside, but you have to really pick the animals that have been raised that way. So they have gone out and searched people that do all their lambing outside on pastures. How does that breed do in a situation that is going to resemble what you're going to have? I hope this helps. I think there's a lot of new producers that have just wanted some advice. Some people get like 10 or 15 sheep and they send me a picture and they say, now what? Hope I haven't missed anything, and I'm sure I have because it changes all the time. Guys, next week will be lambing, and if there's any other questions you want answered, comment below. Just let me know what you want to see. I've been doing a lot of vlogs all summer because we've been so busy. So for me, it was just easier to grab my camera. I just wanted to bring you guys with me. It was a lot easier than doing some of these more tutorial videos, but there's been quite a few new viewers, and I just didn't want you to miss kind of what this channel is about, and that's to help. I want all of us to help each other because it can be a very frustrating and a very rewarding business, and I just want to take you guys through my journey, and I want you to stay with it and not give up on your journey because it's hard. So I hope this helps. Thanks. Take care.